Alright, Jason Price, Director of the Library, back with you again. I'm going to talk to you a little bit right now about plagiarism. I know, not the most exciting of topics to discuss, but nevertheless a very important one, particularly at the college level. Um, you may have already heard some of this before in high school, or if you transferred from someplace else, that plagiarism was one of those things that, excuse me, that maybe at high school it was sort of blown off, or oh well, you plagiarized this so you can redo the assignment. Well, that's not necessarily the case when you get to the college level in many of your classes. Now, um, first question we should probably ask is, what is plagiarism? Well, it's most people think it's just copy and paste in somebody else's work, which is one form of it, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in just a minute. But primarily it's just taking somebody else's idea without giving proper credit. So if you have an idea that's not considered yours, that your brain didn't come up with, and it's not what we consider encyclopedic common knowledge, of course, a lot of you probably aren't old enough to remember the old Encyclopedia Britannicas that actually had, 26 volumes A through Z, and, you open it up and there's 5 or 6 sentences about what an aardvark is and the A's, and, it would tell you what it was. The rule used to be that if you could find it in that, paragraph or whatever was in the encyclopedia, then you didn't have to cite it. And that is true to a large extent, nowadays. So, if you can find it generally on 3 to 5 reliable internet sources, you don't have to cite it. So, the North won the Civil War. We all know that. That's not something that you have to cite. But famous birthdays, death dates, places, mythology, those kind of things, you don't have to. Now, what do you have to cite? Well, you have to cite statistics, because you didn't do the research. That's great that you know that 50,000 people died last year from drunk drivers, but where'd you get that information? The government, from Mothers Against Drunk Driving, so on and so forth. So Department of Transportation, you could get that from anywhere. Somebody else's idea. So direct quotes, and most students know that you have to cite direct quotes, but I just want to talk to you a little bit about what the different types of plagiarism are. And one place that I like is plagiarism.org, because it makes these pretty easy to spot. So the first one, the clone, that's just copying and pasting somebody else's work, so taking it from the internet, turning in somebody else's paper. I've seen mother and daughter turn in the same paper in the same class, boyfriend and girlfriend. That happens quite a bit. Number two, Control C. That's where you copy and paste significant chunks, but add your own stuff in it as well. And if you don't give, anytime you take something word for word, it's going to be plagiarism unless you put it in quotation marks and cite where you got it. So that's just something that you need to be aware of. Number three, the find and replace. A lot of students will do this, and the way that they'll go about it is they'll go, oh, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste something, and then I'm going to change the big words, or I'm going to change every third word. And that's still plagiarism. Why? Well, because it's taking somebody else's idea. Just because you change the vocabulary word in a particular sentence doesn't change the meaning of the sentence. Number four, we see a ton, and that's the remix, where you paraphrase from a bunch of different places. And of course, it's also possible that it's amazing how closely a lot of people's papers and answers mimic Wikipedia's structure. So they'll just paraphrase an entire Wikipedia page and turn it in as their own work. Number five is recycle. It's kind of silly, but it's something that you need to be aware of. If you've written a paper before and turned it in, you cannot use chunks of that paper without getting permission from the person you originally turned the paper into and the person that you will turn the next paper into. What a lot of enterprising students will do is they will have, say, an article review for 2 different classes. Let's use history and government. And you want to do it on something that will qualify for both, and you want to just write one article and turn them both in. Well, you can't do that unless you get permission from the history and government instructor. So you have to write your own paper every single time. You can't just use the same paper over and over again without getting permission. Number 6, the hybrid. Um, you know, is where you cite a lot of things correctly, but then you also copied passages, and there's some that you didn't cite. So you could have your entire paper correct, but if you copy and paste something and use it and don't quote it properly, or take statistics and don't cite it, that's still plagiarism, even though your entire paper isn't plagiarized. The mashup, mixed copy material from multiple sources. This happens quite a bit when there's a multi-part question, and there's not some, one website for you to find the answer, so you go to multiple websites and copy and paste that stuff. The 404 error, citations to non-existent or inaccurate information about sources. This one is probably the jaywalking of plagiarism, really, because it's very easy to transpose two numbers. So page 48, you might accidentally type page 84. If we can't find where you got your information, it's plagiarism. Okay? So if you have a statistic and you say you got it on page 48 and we turn to page 48 and it's not there, that's going to be a problem for you. So, like I say, most of the time this happens out of carelessness and not proofreading your paper. The aggregator includes proper citations to sources, but the paper contains almost no original work. Well, if you're doing a research paper, instructors want to see that you have looked at the question, sat down, got yourself informed about it, and then you actually spend a little time thinking about what that means, and you've come up with some of your own conclusions. And then, of course, you use statistics and quotes and everything else to back up what your thoughts on the matter are. So you can't just quote everybody else in the world and not bother to include your own opinion on the matter. So you can't cite everything, and we went over that what you do and don't have to cite. So common knowledge, you don't. The last one is the retweet, and this one's a very tough one, both to prove and students can sometimes get themselves in trouble with, because you'll cite something, but it's very, very similar to what is found somewhere else. And this is no more apparent than when you get lecture notes and you're reading your lecture notes, and all of a sudden your lecture notes, you rephrase your lecture notes ever so slightly and don't cite them, where you go to a Wikipedia page and paraphrase the Wikipedia page, and even if you cite it, that's a problem. A lot of times the book, if you have a book for the class, students will read from the book, and then they go, man, that's written really good that way. I can't think of any other way that I would rewrite that. And the best thing that you could do for that is to read everything and get up to date with your topic, and then close your book, minimize your web pages, and then just write and just go from there. And if you use any statistics or direct quotes, make sure to cite them. So to avoid plagiarism, you have to have a works cited or a bibliography page, and you have to have the parenthetical citation, which is the author and the page number, or whatever your citation style is that you're supposed to use for your assignment. So that's just sort of a very brief overview of what plagiarism is. We could certainly go into more in depth, and if you're taking classes out here, we will go more in depth, but just remember, the punishment can range from failing the assignment to failing the course to being kicked out of school, and that has happened. And it doesn't just happen to the bad students, it happens to good students. We've had, a student that was the president of our honor society kicked out. So just bear this in mind. This will make your life easier.